Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. So, the title of today's talk is Towards an Understanding of Kūṭiyāṭṭam through Nāṭyaśāstra. So, there are two key terms here, Kūṭiyāṭṭam and Nāṭyaśāstra, and I'll take you through both of uh, these elements. Kūṭiyāṭṭam is a Sanskrit theatre based in Kerala. Kudi means together, and atom is play, to play, to perform. So Kūṭiyāṭṭam is coming together and performing together of of different characters on stage, right? It and several scholars have also um, interpreted it as different communities coming together, two different communities coming together, because it was traditionally performed by the Chakyars, who were actors, the Nambiyars, who were instrumentalists, and the Nangyars, who were the spouses, the wives of the Nambiyar. And it's a Sanskrit based theatre. The literature is primarily in Malayalam and Manipravalam. And as we see in many of the Sanskrit plays, the royal characters they speak in Sanskrit, and they render their dialogues in Sanskrit, and the female characters and the other marginal characters speak Prakrits and different kinds of Prakrits that were in vogue across the subcontinent. Um, and till the 1950s it was performed in the Kūtambalams, which are the temple playhouses. Okay, so they were the temple playhouses. They were in the vicinity of the temple campus, and those were the temple playhouses where these uh, Kūṭiyāṭṭams were performed. And it was only after the 1950s that it was thrown open to a wider audience, um, in Kerala and outside of Kerala. There were performances in Delhi, Chennai, Varanasi, and even in Paris. In 2001, UNESCO recognized Kūṭiyāṭṭam as the masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity, and there were a lot of funds that were flowing as part of the UNESCO convention. So there are actually two kinds of performances. I would say three kinds of performances. There one is the Chakyar Kūta, the Nangyar Kūta, and then the Kūṭiyāṭṭam itself. So the Prabandha Kūta or Chakyar Kūta is the solo performance by a Chakyar, or the male actor. It's primarily it's an offshoot of the Vidushaka character within the Sanskrit plays. The Nangyar Kūta is a solo recapitulation, so to speak. It's a recapitulation where the character called Kalpalatika, from the play Subhadra Dhananjaya, she is the friend, the maid servant, uh, and friend of Subhadra, and she is actually remembering and narrating the plays, the stories. So that's Nangyar Kuta. And when these characters come together, the Chakyar and the Nangyar, or and several other characters come together, we have the Kūṭiyāṭṭam. Uh, Here we see Kalyana Saugandhigam, the play Kalyana Saugandhigam, where it's the story of Bhima and uh, uh, Hanuman, and that's the play here. So I'm sorry, I cannot see the comments on the chat.
Sorry, ma'am, but I only intended to say that the presentation is not working. I guess you are still on the introductory slide only.
Oh, is
I
it?
can only
Oh,
yes,
I'm so sorry.
the slides are not changing, ma'am. Just
Oh, is it? Is it? Okay, okay, okay.
sure. Thank you.
Is it visible now?
No, yeah, now
Yes,
it's
ma'am, it
visible.
is.
Okay, so here I was here. I'm so sorry, you could have just told me in the beginning. Uh, this is Kūṭiyāṭṭam. This is the Kūṭiyāṭṭam. And here we have Kūṭiyāṭṭam. And this is the Kūtambalam that I'm talking about, right? We slowly move to the other element that I was talking about, the Nāṭyaśāstra, which is a text on dramaturgy, a classical text on dramaturgy, and it is about 6,000 verses that are written in 36 chapters, and it is talking about music, the stage setting, the makeup, costumes, direction, uh, everything around dramaturgy several decades and millennia ago. So, and it is ascribed to Bharata Muni, and the scholars um, suggest that there were several other authors as well there who added on to this particular text. It's called the Natya Veda. It's the fifth Veda. Now, also because it's a text which was open to all the castes of the entire the Varna system when we look at it, and it's written in the Nāṭyaśāstra that it will be open to all the other communities, right? Uh, the recitation is taken from the Rig Veda. The recitation that we see in the plays, it's taken from the Rig Veda. The Abhinaya from Yajur Veda, music from the Sama Veda, and rasa from the Atharva Veda. And very interestingly, the emergence of the Natya, the story is very important, and the story is of the Samudra Manthan. I'm sure some of you know about the story where the demons and there are two teams. There are the demons and the devas and the asuras, and the play is being performed, and at the end of it, what happens is the demons, the asuras, do not receive the amritam, and the at the in the audience, the people who are sitting are the asuras and the devas, and when they see it, they are very agitated, they are very angry, and they destroy the entire space which is where the play is being performed. And what happens is Brahma comes and he makes it clear to the asuras that this is a play, right? This is a play, and this is not reality. It's an imitation of reality, and that's the story of the Natya. That's the story of Natya Ulpatti, right? So that's where this important text on dramaturgy begins. The summum bonum of Nāṭyaśāstra is this: Rasa bhava hi abhinaya dharmi vritti pravrityah siddhi swara tatha atodyam ganam rangascha sangraha. So these small elements that we'll go through in the course of this presentation. Um, Rasa,
Really very sorry to interrupt, ma'am, but the slides are still not changing. We are still on the fourth slide only.
is there some technical glitch? I am not
I
sure.
think maybe you need to share the window also along with the
Okay,
like
okay,
there are two, three
okay.
options to share.
All right. I'll do that. I'll do that.
Yes.
You mean the window or the entire screen?
Yeah, I think you need to share the window also,
I
like
I
not the
did
screen.
I did share the entire window. Uh,
Because the presentation wasn't rolling, like just your slides were visible as they are seen in the PPT, not like the whole presentation.
oh,
Like when you make the PPT, that was visible.
right. Is this visible now? The movement.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's fine.
Yes, now it's fine.
Okay.
So this is the summum bonum of Nāṭyaśāstras. Rasa bhava hi abhinaya dharmi vritti pravrityah siddhi swara tatha atodyam ganam rangascha sangraha. right? So these are the elements that we'll be going through: rasa, bhava, abhinaya, dharmi, vritti, pravritya. So we start with Ranga, the stage, because that's almost the first chapter of the Nāṭyaśāstra, where they are discussing, where the text discusses about the different kinds of stages. Bharat Gupt, a scholar, he talks about this, that even though there are different kinds of stages, that there are three kinds of stages that the Nāṭyaśāstra discusses, and we do not find reminiscences, we do not find any evidences of the stage, as we see in Greek theater, for example. We do not find such evidences in the Indian context. And what happens is, um, and the reason for that, he assumes, is that um, it was very sacrificial in nature, it was ritualistic in nature, and that is why, as soon as a performance was done, the entire space was destroyed. And we see this in several rituals, right? We see this, for example, in the serpent worship in Kerala, that a specific space is designed, a specific space is constructed, and as soon as it concludes, it's destroyed, the entire space is destroyed. So and maybe this was the reason why we do not find such spaces in the Indian context. However, we do find the Kūṭambalam, the playhouse, and it's believed that it came into existence only in the 12th to 14th century, when there was the Brahmin ascendancy in Kerala, right? And also it was coupled with the Chola Chera War and the draining of the treasury. So all of this was happening simultaneously, and the Brahmins were settling in. And because there was because the patronage was was dwindling, the courtly patronage was dwindling. What's happening to Kūṭiyāṭṭam is that it is slowly moving to a different kind of patronage, which is under the temples, right? And that is why this particular kind of playhouse was constructed. um, and we see that. So this is what I was discussing, right? I hope the slides are changing now. The second part is Swara Gana Atodyam, right? The music and musical instruments. And we find a lot of information, information on uh, uh, the raga system, as well as the musical instruments, the stringed, the wind instruments, the hollow instruments in the Nāṭyaśāstra. And what happens is, the same thing happens in Kūṭiyāṭṭam as well. We find percussion instruments, primarily percussion instruments, in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, and the placement of the mirav, which is the pot shaped instrument, the main instrument, percussion. It is between the two doors of the green room, right? And as we come here, for example, I don't know if you guys can see the pointer here. So this is the nepatya, and here you have the two doors, right? So the mirav is kept between the two doors here on the stage, right? And this is something that the Nāṭyaśāstra also prescribes, right? It prescribes that the percussion should be kept at the back of the stage, right? And this is between the Nepatya doors, and this is something that is followed in Kūṭiyāṭṭam. However, we do not find a lot of stringed instruments in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, even wind instruments. Stringed instruments, yes, we have the Edakya now, which is partly a stringed instrument, and also it's a later addition to the repertoire, to the entire performance of Kūṭiyāṭṭam. Uh, Wind, yes, we have the shank, yes, the conch. Otherwise, it's primarily the percussion that is uh, used in Kūṭiyāṭṭam. We have vritti, pravritti, dharmi, and siddhi. Vritti is behavior, basically, right? So we have Bharati, we have Satvati, Arabhati, Kaishiki. Kaishiki is the graceful movement. Arabhati is the heroic movement of a particular character, of a particular world of a play, right? Pravritti is how different geographical locations of India um, used these these behavioral patterns. Say, for example, in the Dakshinatya, we had more of graceful as well as heroic. So there was more of Kaishiki as well as Aravati, and we see that in art forms like Mohiniyattam, as well as the other, say, Kadagali also, where there are very heroic and strong movements there. Dharmi is Natya Dharmi and Loka Dharmi. Natya Dharmi is which is more inclined to the precepts of the Nāṭyaśāstra, right? And Lokadharmi is when there is the element of the Natya, but then there also is a very real depiction. Say, and Padma Subramaniam talks about this, gives an example of Natya Dharmi and Lokadharmi, where somebody is crying, for example. So, if somebody is crying, then Natya Dharmi would be just to show it through emotions, right? Lokadharmi would be to actually show the tears. So that's the actual difference of Natya Dharmi and Lokadharmi. Siddhi is of Devi and Manushi Siddhi. If the audience is in a trance, if the rasa experience, if the audience is in a trance, then it is Devi. If the audience is applauding, is very happy, then or agitated, that will be a Manushi Siddhi, as we saw in the reactions of asuras in the the emergence of the Natya story. Abhinaya, yes, we have four kinds of abhinaya, which are the bodily movements, the angika abhinaya, the vachika abhinaya, which is the language, the rendering of the dialogues, right? And aharya abhinaya, which is costuming and makeup, not just costuming and makeup, but also the stage settings, how the stage is being set, where are the instruments being kept. Uh, so this is something that is being followed by the Kūṭiyāṭṭam as well, in Kūṭiyāṭṭam as well. Satvika Abhinaya is how a character shows the psychological states, the emotional state of a character. Subhava is basically how these emotions are being depicted. So what what situation causes a character to emote or behave in a certain way. So that's vibhava. Then what is the consequence of it? And then there are transitory. What a character cannot be happy all the time on stage, right? There are always these transitions that happen within a character as well. So that's the concept of bhava. And then we come to rasa, which is what the audience feels. It's the aesthetic experience of seeing a performance, of watching a performance, of so that is rasa, right? So this is Shringara. We have Hasya, Raudra, Karunam, Bhivatsam, Bhayanakam, Veeram, Adbhutam, Shantam. Right. So now we come to where these two meet, Kūṭiyāṭṭam and the Nāṭyaśāstra. And for that, it's very important to understand the case of Natankusha. We definitely understood, we definitely went through how these angika bhinaya, how these rasa and bhava and the stage settings and all the stage, the kind of stages, what are the things that are considered by or incorporated within Kūṭiyāṭṭam, and what is not getting incorporated in Kūṭiyāṭṭam. But the point of the text that actually determines this kind of confluence is the Natankusha. And it's very interesting to understand this. This is actually a 14th, 15th century text, uh, where there is a conversation between an actor and a spectator. And the actor is from the Chakyar community, and the spectator is a person who is, say, well versed in the Nāṭyaśāstra, and only talks about or discusses Natya Sanskrit plays through the lens of the Nāṭyaśāstra, and anything that deviates from the Natya, anything that deviates from that Shastra is being condemned. And this is what we see in the Natankusha. There is the critique on the use of local dialect, and as I told you, there is the use of Malayalam in the literature. There is the use of even the characters like Shurpanaka is not using the actual Malayalam, right? I wouldn't say actual Malayalam, and it's actually understood as Mlecha Bhasha in terms of Nāṭyaśāstra. So it's a very colloquial kind of Malayalam that she uses, and so there is the critique by the spectator on the local dialect, on the use of local dialect. Then on the Ahare Binaya, because the same character in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, what happens is the same character, while doing the recapitulation, while remembering certain stories and narratives, can switch between characters, right? So the same actor would play Krishna, would play Yashoda, would play Devaki. So she can play the same character, throughout the performance. So there is, but the clothing, the costume is not getting changed. So there is a critique on the Arabina as well, and this is related to the representation of women within in the context of the 14th, 15th century text, because we understand that say Sita or other characters like Subhadra were not really getting represented on the Kūṭiyāṭṭam stage at that point in time. Sita, for example, was depicted by a male character. He would just put in a small piece of cloth and render her dialogues. So this happens even today at some stages, right? So this was being critiqued by the person, the spectator. Another point is about the recapitulation. So the entire the most important dramaturgical technique within Kūṭiyāṭṭam is the acting technique, where there is recapitulation. Every character goes through through their perspective, goes through their perspective of a particular narrative. So Hanuman would think about how he came into existence, or how Sita came, how Ram came, and how they came together, and things like that. Ram would have a very different perspective. Sita would have a very different perspective. So they would so there is this huge, this mm, uh, the rendering of the narratives is very, very detailed, right? It's very slow and very detailed. Uh, so this is something that is being critiqued by the spectator, right? That the acting should not be, so intertwined and, so detailed. It's not necessary. Maybe you can cut this short. And what is important is to stick to the script of the play. So what we understand that is there was a kind of tradition here, right? There was this tradition that was built around the Nāṭyaśāstra. However, there was also a deviation from that through Kūṭiyāṭṭam, right? And what happens is that this idea of the tradition, this idea of modernity, it keeps changing, right? So what is tradition today? For the 14th 15th century spectator, it was the Nāṭyaśāstra that was the tradition, right? And it's slowly and the deviation or something that should be thrown out are the dramaturgical techniques of Kūṭiyāṭṭam. Today, the classical or the traditional idea is what Kūṭiyāṭṭam stands for, and something that is transforming, something that is deviant, or something that is uh, uh, not classical, becomes something that to be thrown out, or something to be something that is modern, or something that there is always this friction that is happening. So what I'm trying to bring here is that a tradition as a concept, as an idea, is not something which has to be boxed, right? Something which is watertight. uh, Even in the 14th 15th century, or even later, or even before, right? And I haven't gone into the history of Kūṭiyāṭṭam itself and how it emerged and things like that, but even there we see how there is always a transition, right? Some element is getting into the core, something is getting it's kept out of the entire repertoire or the performance of Kūṭiyāṭṭam, or even Nāṭyaśāstra, right? So there is always this blurring, so to speak. There is always this blurring that happens in this journey of the tradition and modern elements that that are in play, right? And with that I come to the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful speech. We would also like to take this moment to congratulate Dr. Nair for recently completing her PhD in discipline of humanities and sciences from IIT Gandhinagar. So congratulations from all of us.
Thank you.
And as students of culture and history, we generally have many doubts and questions with us. Keeping that in mind, we have prepared some questions and would like to request you to kindly permit us to ask those to you.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So first question is, uh, as you know, you're also trained in Indian classical music, Bharatanatyam, and briefly in Angyar Kottu. So how do these varied performance art forms these art forms interact and influence each other within the Kerala's cultural landscape? And how have your experience in these arts shaped your understanding of coexistence of cultures particular to Kerala tradition? So
Yeah, thank you for that question. So firstly, Bharatanatyam is not from Kerala. It's
yeah,
classical art from Tamil Nadu. So personally, if you're talking about my journey as an artist, going through and learning all of these art forms, so I had learned Bharatanatyam as a kid, so there was this muscle memory. And when I went onto the field to learn Nangiyar Kutha, it was a little different in the sense that there is a lot of, as I told you, there is a lot of Kaishiki movement. There is a lot of graceful movement in Bharatanatyam. Now, that is something that you have to tame in the context of theater, in the context of Nair, specifically because of the historical baggage that this art form carries, right? Because there is a lot of ritual aspect which is connected to it, and there are families that are following this tradition. So, and they want it in a particular way. They want it to be performed in a particular way, and that is actually the nature of the art form also. I'm not just talking about the historicity or the family traditions, but that's the nature of the art form as well. So you cannot have those graceful movements sometimes that you see in Bharatanatyam. Secondly, about the Abhinaya, I was talking about the Angika Abhinaya, for example. So the mudras, for example, in Bharatanatyam are very much related to the Nāṭyaśāstra. You know, however, the mudras in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, in Nair, are related to the Hasta Lakshana Deepika. That's a text, that also influences Kathakali and Mohiniyattam in Kerala, right? So certain there are certain words, or there are certain names of these mudras which are taken from the Nāṭyaśāstra, but in practice they are very different. So the pataka in Bharatanatyam is this, but I think it's in Kūṭiyāṭṭam it's this. I think, yeah, this is the, so there is the difference there in the understanding of, or in the usage of those terms. As for music, yes, we have the system of ragas in Bharatanatyam, also in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, but because in the rendering of shlokas, they are called swaras. They are called swaram. They are not called ragas in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, right? And the recitation, if you try to find performance on YouTube, you'll see the kind of the rendering is like the recitation in recitation of Yajurveda. So the kind of recitation we do of the Vedas. So and it's also related to the history of it, because there was the temple patronage. There were these shloka recitation in the temples at that point in time, the Brahmin ascendancy. So there is a lot of things that are happening in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, as against what's with the musical traditions that were there across the subcontinent, so to speak. So yeah, I think I've answered your question.
And also, I wanted to ask, like, does these traditions, specifically you talk about Kūṭiyāṭṭam and other related traditions, does these also had some impact in sort of localized art forms like Theyyam is there and others like that?
That's an excellent question. So I think it's the other way around as well, because Tayyam is a local, and it's a Deshi folk art form,
Yeah.
right? And it's very much connected to the soil of Kerala, the land of Kerala. Also because it's connected to the Devis, the Bhagavati temples of Kerala. So of the women, of the feminine energy, right? So and the makeup also is so detailed when we look, and there are different kinds of Theyyams of the local deities in North Kerala, primarily in North Kerala. So and this is something that comes from art historian Kapila Vatsyayan also, that she says that in the context of Kathakali and Krishnattam, actually, that when Kathakali or Krishnattam were emerging in the court spaces of Kerala. Yes, there were stories of Krishna, Rama, and all of them, but for the aharya, for the makeup, for the costuming, they were somehow influenced and dependent on the uh, local, local art forms. So, and that's what is happening. The confluence of the Marga Deshi that is happening. The concept of the Marga Deshi is actually getting blurred there. So the Marga is, so for us, the classical, or the, something that has the literature, something which is codified, is the Krishnattam or Kadagali and Kūṭiyāṭṭam. But they are actually somewhere getting influenced by the local mm, uh, uh, art forms also. And I had a conversation with Kalamandalam Ram Mohan Ashan, who is a very senior makeup artist, and he was actually in Kadagali. He was doing the Kadagali makeup, and I asked him whether Kadagali has influenced Kūṭiyāṭṭam, and he says yes, obviously. Now, this is something that something that would be unacceptable for a lot of scholars or artists. Most of the artists, it will be unacceptable because Kūṭiyāṭṭam comes much before than Kadagali. However, we see that similarity. We have the chutti, the mask which is there, or the green color. So I'm not saying that these were not being used in Kūṭiyāṭṭam. They were being used, but the fine tuning, or the influences of Kadagali was happening there. So Kadagali getting influenced from, say, Kūṭiyāṭṭam, as well as Tayyam or other local art forms. Kūṭiyāṭṭam also getting influenced, something which was coming before. So there is always this amalgamation and confluence that is happening throughout history, and that's where the tussle of tradition and modernity comes into the picture. Yeah.
Thank you. That was an excellent answer. Another question, it's particularly considered with the linguistic aspect of this, right? So, like, especially as you pointed out in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, you have Sanskrit dialogues spoken by certain, sort of, I would say, higher birth people, especially gods, kings. While commoners speak somewhat, sometimes they speak in sort of a Malayalam, sort of a Dravidianized form of Sanskrit. Sometimes they speak in Prakrit. So has it also influenced the development of Malayalam language throughout?
Yes, definitely. And uh, you can actually read Rich Freeman, who is writing on the literature, and how the Chakyars were very important here, and not just Chakyars, even the courtly spaces of Kerala were very important in supporting the literature. And because Malayalam, if you consider all the other South Indian languages, it's the most
Yeah.
recently developed language, and it's coming as a culmination of Sanskrit and Tamil, right? And we had, before that, before Malayalam, we had Mani Pravalam, and several of the texts were being scholars are being, they are trying to translate them. But we find these influences of Tamil in Tamil and Sanskrit in the Mani Pravalam. And then later on, now Chakyars were using that language, or even we find those influences in the Arta Pragarams and the Kramadeepikas, which are the production and stage manuals that these actors are using. So they were using, and still they are still using them. So we find those influences of those languages there. And then slowly and steadily, when because it's the Guru Shishya Parampara that they are following. So when the Shishya is noting it down, maybe there is a change in language, right? Maybe from so there is always this from slight change, because you're noting it down. So uh, largely it will be the same, but then the literature will obviously shift. And then we have the classical Malayalam that is coming into the picture, and then later on the changes that we see in the Malayalam language today. So yeah, so Yes, that's so. Yes, these art forms have played a very crucial role in the development of Malayalam uh, in Kerala. Yeah.
Also, I would this is another question of mine, and I think it's quite relevant with the modernity aspect of this. Like when the during colonial period, especially during that, there was this push towards like criminalizing temple dancing. They called it devdasi. They had included everything as devdasi system as well. So due to that as well, many of these institutions that had these kind of that used to do these patronages and especially temples and all that. So there's a distinction I see, especially in Kerala. Some of these traditional dance forms and all, and this Kerala, and to some extent in Tamil Nadu, they're like popular. They're still, very much patronized. Well, if you go northern, for example, in Karnataka, to some extent in Andhra, in Telangana, in those areas, they have criminalized sort of this whole concept of temple dancing as Devdasi system. Devdasi system. So has it also impacted specifically the or has it hampered the development of this field to some extent, or is it relatively untouched with that sort of this malignant legislative pieces?
See, firstly, I think even in Tamil Nadu, that was the situation with the Devadasi system, and we have, we have Lakshmi Subramaniam talking about that. We have other articles also on the Devadasi system, which is based in Tamil Nadu, and yes, the Devadasi system did criminalize these women, and specifically the Kathak artists. Yes, in the Lucknow, Awadh, that kind of belt. Yes, because of the mutiny. However, in Kerala, I think it was a little different because it was a very family kind of a structure, right? So and they were drawing courtly patronage and temple patronage also. So they were working women, and this is something that this is a question that I had a year ago, and I did ask Dr. CK Jayanti this, and she's an artist and scholar. I mean, beautiful scholar and amazing. So she was talking about this, that they were working women, and they were also uh, performing with the men of the family, right, of their own community. So somewhere I think they were guarded, right, in a guarded space as against the Devadasi women in the context of Bharatanatyam. And even the entire idea of the Devadasi is very different from what the Namyars were doing, right? So the criminalization maybe happened for Mohiniyattam, right?
Okay.
But it did not quite happen with Nangyar Kūṭu because because the relation with the god there, it's not that they are wedded to the god
Yeah.
or the deity. They are performers, they are actors. And that kind of that definition, I think, was very clear at that point in time. And also the matrilineal system was in place. So
Oh.
they were being taught by their uncles and aunts within the comfort of their home. I wouldn't say comfort, because the men were actually traveling to other palaces to learn more, and that is why a lot of the female characters had to be redefined and reimagined in the present context, because uh, a lot of these female characters and their depictions went into oblivion around that period, when we are talking the colonial period. So maybe the family structure was an important element to guard these women, and also their actual definition and actual relationship with the deity or the temple space was very different as against the Devadasis, and the Yeah, the Kathak artists. I mean, the Kathak artists obviously they were the they were very different. The courtesans were very different. Yes.
Sorry.
So yeah,
Sorry.
I think that answers your question.
Yeah. So if anybody else wants to a question, wants to ask any
Thank you for
questions.
that list of questions.
Uh, yeah. Well,
Samagra. Yeah, I don't
yeah.
know if I'm saying that right.
No. You're better.
You're not audible. Yeah.
You're pronouncing it better than most people. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So if anybody else has any questions, we can.
Um. See, that's what I was talking about. In the movie Kantara or the Muttappan example that you are seeing, it's very much related to the land, right? Or the feminine energy, as we talk about in Tayyam or the Bhagavati Kshetrams. So in Kūṭiyāṭṭam, we do not have many Devi or the trance like. So that's the main that's the unique identification of these art forms. Kantara. That there is this point about trance, right? Uh, we do not quite see that in Kūṭiyāṭṭam. Yes, it's a ritual, and that even that is contested, right? If we look at scholars like Mundoli Narayanan who have discussed about the over ritualization because it was open to the Western scholars, and these Western scholars had this concept of over ritualizing Kūṭiyāṭṭam. Uh, the ultimate conclusion of that essay was that maybe Kūṭiyāṭṭam came as a normal, it had a repertoire, there were plays being enacted, but the ritual aspect of it was an addition, right? And the rituals were appended at the beginning and end of the entire play or performance, right? Now, that is not what is happening in the movie Kantara, because it's related to the land, right? It's related to the homage we pay to the land, or the 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 connection or deep devotion we have for the land and deity, and the trance part is involved. That is something that we do not quite see in Kūṭiyāṭṭam. So yeah, I'm reading the second question. Um, you say that we saw that here tradition moved from Nāṭyaśāstra to Kūṭiyāṭṭam. So it's not a switch that, okay, there was something called a Nāṭyaśāstra, and then uh, there is Kūṭiyāṭṭam. And it's actually a very good question, and I understand how we are talking about performance studies, and we are talking about performance and then relating to the other Indic knowledge systems. Uh, so the point is, even in Natyashastra, we have the concept of geography and how the regional art forms are being performed and how the regional art forms are behaving, right? And that is why we were talking about the pravritti, right? Um, so what is happening is that Kūṭiyāṭṭam is definitely taking from the Natyashastra, or it is getting influenced, but maybe but there are regional influences Yes, there is the Sanskrit repertoire, yes, but then there are so many regional influences that are happening. The local dialect is coming into the picture, or the local aharya is coming into the picture. So, or the staging is very different. So, we see these regional things, and then we will ask that, okay, did the text come first, or did the tradition or the performance or the art form came first? Um, I According to me, I think uh, the tradition existed. Maybe it was codified later, right? Or maybe it was written down later. Maybe it is codified but it is not written, right? So even with tayyam, I don't think it is written. It is codified, yes. It's in the family structure, it is codified, but it is not actually written. However, Kūṭiyāṭṭam is written, and it is written by the actors, by the gurus, by these family, elders or the actors. So they were writing it, and they were writing it in Malayalam. The texts are in Manipravalam and Malayalam. So they are taking those influences, and they are, uh, but it's not the entirety. Nāṭyaśāstra doesn't become their, say, the only point of, I would say, influence for them. There are regional influences also for them, and for understanding older traditions, according to you, how useful would be the study of older traditions for? Uh, yes, I mean, we do understand that, okay, where do you deviate and where do you, for example, when I studied Kūṭiyāṭṭam, and then when I studied Nāṭyaśāstra, I understand that, okay, these were the things that were, they might have influenced, but we see those influence everywhere, right? And I would recommend you to actually watch um, these DD. I don't know if they are available on YouTube. There are DD channels, videos by Padma Subramaniam, and it's a very beautiful video where she's actually telling us how the foot movements, the leg movements of Manipuri, Bharatanatyam, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, Kuchipudi, they are somewhere very similar. They sound very different. The names that are given to these leg movements are different. However, the there is a similarity in the way they in the way they are being performed, right? And that is why understanding the older traditions become crucial to, say, even depart from something that is older. So you need to know something at the core, or you need to know something, what's the origin, or the origin or the actual source of it, in order to depart, or in order to create something new. I'm talking in the context of, say, performance itself, right? So you need to know the core of Kūṭiyāṭṭam repertoire in order to be able, to create something of your own, or say, think of a play, or think of a character, or reimagining a character. That is important, right? And I remember when I was having a conversation with uh, mm, Srimati Usha Nangyar. She actually reimagined the character of Ahalya from Ramayana, and she said that she kept reading that particular, uh, that particular part about Ahalya, and she said that she reimagined it in the way that there were certain silences, quote unquote, pregnant silences there, uh, because when she's turned into a stone, right? She's taking in so much pain, right? That she's for example, when her dearest pet deer is coming to, he's trying to search her, and he's not able to find her, because she has turned into a stone, and the pain that she uh, endures in order to, because she wants to embrace him, but then she's not able to. And then, of the weather conditions, or of these animals who are coming to sharpen their trunk, tusks and, horns. So the pain, that she's a stone, yes, but the pain she's enduring, and this is the way she's reimagining the character, right? And when she read that particular part, she says that she was Ahalya, but then she becomes the she becomes a very revered character immediately after Rama touches her. So it's not because she says, and she understands that it's not because Rama blesses her. It's because she endured that pain. She could have she could be revered in that sense. So this particular actress, Srimati Usha Nangyar, she had to go back to these uh, texts. She was definitely looking at the Atapragarams and Kramadipikas of Kūṭiyāṭṭam, but she was also going to she read the Ramayana several times in order to understand, and in order to depart from what the world understands about Ahalya. So I think that is why reading the older, reading about older traditions, reading the older texts is actually significant in order to understand the newer ones. Yeah. Are there more questions?
I'm reading one. So the question is, how much of your study involved physical visits to the locations to witness the art forms, or is there sufficient literature available to study them from a distance? This is yeah.
Thank you for that question. So yes, I had my pilot study for about 2 months, and then I was on my field work for 6 to 7 months, where I learned the art form Nair under the tutelage of Srimati Kalamandalam Prashanti, and I learned Pudana Moksham Nair. So it was also because there's so much research, and there is so much so much being written on Kūṭiyāṭṭam now, that the Kūṭiyāṭṭam artists also know this. And this is I know this is a question on methodology and stuff. So even the artists know that, okay, there are these students who are coming, there are these researchers who are coming, but who is ready to invest their time and energy to understand Kūṭiyāṭṭam in depth, because it is actually an art form which involves sukshma abhinaya, the detailed acting, not sthula, sukshma abhinaya. So in order to invest that energy, in order to interact with these artists and scholars and students, and even temple officials, I had to actually learn the art form and watch several of the performances and festivals. I was there. I watched the Irinalakuda festival, then um, the Nepatya festival, and then there was this Kalamandalam festival also, and then there was one at Trivandrum, which is the Sangeet Natak Academy Kūṭiyāṭṭam Kendra festival. So I attended a lot of festivals. I watched a lot of performances in order to understand the art form, because the mudras are a little complicated. So it's actually because it's based a Sanskrit based theatre. So there are mudras even for, say, ke liye, hetu, and for even for those possessives, and they have the mudras for them, or for that also. So you have to be very careful in understanding these plays. Literature available, yes. David Schulman has been trying to I think that so there was this particular I'm reading that book currently. So it's a book on I think the two plays, Kalyana Saugandhigam and one more play. So yeah, so it's a text by David Schulman, and he has been writing on, you know, what were his experiences on watching and the details of uh, watching these. But I think the experiential thing is more important, to actually go and find out for yourself what is this art all about, and the experience of it, the fatigue, the boredom of it, or the happiness of it. So everything involved. So the experiential part is very significant. Yes. I don't think there is sufficient literature on the rasa part of it. There is definitely a lot about the dramaturgical techniques of it, the even the breathing techniques and all of that, even the sociological aspects of it. But I'm not sure about the rasa experience or to the methodological also. Yes, we have certain articles by Western scholars who are discussing, but not so much in detail. Not so much in detail. We have something by Bruce Sullivan, but it's not that detailed. Yeah, and also Laya Lothar. Last
Yes,
question. Such
sorry,
art,
last.
yeah, such art forms. Yes, that's a very good, I think, observation. Um, that yes, maybe, and I think it's not just about these art forms. If we look at, say, rivers, if we look at environment in general, that was the concept for the Indian tradition, right? That, you know, if you do, if okay, Ganga is Maya, or you know, if there is, you know, if we connect it to the motherland, or if we connect it to the god, right, then we protect it because it's somewhere, it's you know, it's connected to religion. So yes, that was a important thing, not just for performance, but also, and I think it's also related to the history of Kūṭiyāṭṭam, because as I told you, that the patronage shifted from a courtly patronage to temple patronage. So uh, definitely they had to they were incorporating these ritual aspects into the Kūṭiyāṭṭam repertoire, in the Kūṭiyāṭṭam plays, in the Kūṭiyāṭṭam performances, right? So not the repertoire, but the plays. So, uh, so yes, I mean, maybe that was a way of sustaining themselves, because from say the 12th to from 12th to 13th century to the 1950s, they were performing only within the temple spaces and adhering to the ritual aspects of Kūṭiyāṭṭam, right? They were also performing these plays, but the ritual aspects were also connected to it. Now when it has come out, the ritual aspects are not entirely followed, because they are also performed by people outside the community. They are not entirely done by the chakyars and nambyars. So the people who are outside the community, they do not know these rituals at the first place. So yes, and the sustenance, yes, it was difficult. It is still difficult because it is now under governmental patronage and public patronage, which is not really very, you know, it's not lucrative for them, and it's not a very beautiful space for them. But yes, they are yeah, following their tradition, dedicated to their tradition, and uh, linking any other question. Yes, 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 yes. Mm. Yes, and then, you know, and the transformations that happened also as a result, say, to sustain themselves. when you're talking about sustaining and things like that. So the kind of the materials that they were using for makeup. So initially, those the things that they were using for uh, makeup and headgear and all of that, they were very they were not actually long lasting, right? So it was made of bamboo, or they were not really crafted well. So they will have to do the same procedure again and again. But then with the changes that happened with the coming of Kathakali and Kathakali makeup artists coming into the picture to create and craft Kūṭiyāṭṭam attires, costumes and makeup, there was this change, because then the headgears and the ornaments were long lasting. They were made of wood. And another aspect is also about the headgear. So the headgear is made in such a way that there are different kinds of heads, but then that particular crown would fit everyone. So it is made in a certain way that it fits everybody. So that also takes care of the sustenance part, and uh, the part that, you know, it's very economical that way. So yes. Yeah.
So that was our last question. It has been a lively discussion. Seriously, thank you, ma'am, for this Q&A and an insightful speech.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for those insightful questions. I mean, I loved answering those questions. Very, very beautiful questions from everyone.
And certainly all of us loved your answers as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So this would be the end of session.
Yeah,
It
in
was-
case you have more questions, you can always write to me. I am sure your team has my email ID, so I would love to answer your questions.
yeah, we
Sure.
would.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for attending. Thank you very much.